Well, hey there, everyone. How are you doing today? Welcome back to the Opening Minds channel here. I'm Simeon. We've got a very special guest with us this evening. We're with Ron Morehead. And Ron and I didn't know much about him until I was on a show with him with someone that we know who studies these topics, Matt Hein. We were on his Encounters USA show. And I have to say, at the time, I hadn't read his books. I just knew very little about him. And I really thought it'd be fun to have him on the show tonight so that you can ask some questions. I'm sure most of you are as familiar with Ron as I am because you might have been studying this topic much longer than I have. Let me just give you a background of who Ron is. Ron Morehead has been known for decades for his worldwide research into the Bigfoot Sasquatch phenomenon. He's an author, researcher, lecturer, experiencer, and producer of the Sierra Sounds, which you haven't heard yet. You're going to hear a little bit from tonight. To date, he comes closer than any other researcher to having a complete body of evidence. These Sierra Sounds are the only Bigfoot recordings that have been scientifically studied, time-tested, and accredited as genuine. Ron has documented his personal interactions with these giant beings and produced his story on a CD and also in his book, Voices in the Wilderness. In order to try and understand the enigmas associated with these giants, he began to delve into quantum physics. Good choice. For the scientific answers that he and his hunting friends experienced. And as a result, he wrote another thought-provoking book, The Quantum Bigfoot. And let me show you these. So this is Voices in the Wilderness. Should pop up here. Hold on a second. We'll see it in a second. Ron now resides with his partner Carrie in North Carolina, but has traveled from Alaska to Patagonia and from North America to Siberia in search of the truth to how these beings are able to stay so hidden from classical science. Besides being the keynote speaker at many conventions, he's been featured on countless radio programs and TV documentaries such as the Learning Channel and Travel Channel. So welcome, Ron.
Well, thank you, Simeon. Good to be with you.
Yes, thanks for joining us tonight. Let me see if I can bring up what your titles look like. Let's see. So, Voices in the Wilderness. Here we go. So, that's showing on our screen here. So, Ron, I read your books recently since our dialogue on Matt's show, and I have to say, these books, I found them absolutely fascinating. So, this is Voices in the Wilderness, your first book. Which, folks, if you haven't read this book, you need to read this book because it's very detailed and it shows this kind of very long-standing relationship between Ron and these furry giants that he encountered over many trips up to this Sierra camp. And this is, let's see if we can get the other book. Okay. And this other one is The Quantum Bigfoot, which still, to my reading, is the only book that makes a very persuasive case that we're dealing with a phenomenon here that does not fit, as Ron says, into classical science. So, Ron, this is simply fascinating material, and it's so challenging. Over the years, this really must have really led you to question the nature of reality. Where do we actually live? Who's here with us, right?
Yeah, pretty much. Well, it started my search when I encountered these beings, a family of them in the Sierras, me and these other guys, and 8 miles in the wilderness, 8,400 feet elevation, long trip, imposing trip, really. But when you get there, you feel like you're in heaven. It's just so nice and pristine. And so I'd go up there as often as I could after these things just seeing if we could get something going on. We was always trying to trick them. In the 70s when this was happening to us up there, we was just underestimating what we're dealing with. We thought they were just some lost ape up there that hadn't been identified by science yet, and a lot of researchers are still doing that. So, but Al Berry, who was an investigative reporter we took in '72, he was looking for a hoax, like most people thought it was at the time. I say most people. We didn't share it with too many people, but we gave it to Ivan Sanderson, who was a cryptozoologist at the time, and he sent the 23-page handwritten letter to Peter Byrne on the West Coast in Oregon, who contacted Alan Berry. Alan Berry came down and interviewed us, thinking it was a hoax. Didn't know this at all till later on. He told me. We became friends, but he was going through our packs when we was out walking around. He was looking for any sign where somebody could pull this off, because he was trying to prove it differently, because this doesn't happen to people. Again, we were underestimating what we're dealing with at the time, but he had a master's degree in science, and he said, "Don't talk about the screwy stuff up here, or we can't go talk anywhere about this."
Right.
So we didn't for a long time. We've been kicked out of the club, But lately I've been doing that the last few years, just because it is what it is, and just share it. And but I started looking for the science behind it, if there could be a science behind it, besides what we were all trained in the 5th grade, which is classical science, Newtonian physics, which, again, like I mentioned to you earlier, I feel like I'm talking to the choir here, because you guys know all this stuff. But I find out that everything's frequency, energy, and vibration, and you get into all these the stuff that goes on, and you got to wonder why we didn't see them more often. We encountered them so many times up there. My daughter's seen them 3 times. I've only got a glimpse of them once, and one of them. And Johnson's got glimpses of it. And Bill McDowell, my good friend, packing friend, he's the one who him and I carry supplies in on the horses and mules. And we would store those supplies in barrels up there and make them bear-proof. And then that way, when we could walk in, we wouldn't have to take the animals. We could just walk in and have our stuff there, which is a real good thing to do. Except for when the Forestry Service finds out about it, then you got to take it all out, which happened in
it's
2015.
ended up happening, right?
Yeah, it happened in 2015. So the camp's still there, but the shelter which we had is taken down, and we took the barrels out and like that. So anyway, it kind of goes from there, and I got into quantum physics, and I think that kind of put some of the dots together for me, for all the mysteries that we had up there.
When was the first year you actually went up there on your own with your buddies? What was the first year that you actually encountered
1971. 71. Mm-hmm.
You had been told by other people that there was something weird going on up there or something like that?
Well, they were hunting. That was their camp. Johnson Brothers have been going up there since 1958, and they were friends of mine, all of them were, but I wasn't a hunter at the time. One of the guys got freaked out. He just couldn't handle the aggressive soundings that was going on, and he just left out first morning when daylight hit. He wouldn't go back, but the guys were late coming out and the wives were all worried, so he said, "I'll only go back if somebody go with me." So I went with him and got to camp. So they were okay. They were just packing up to leave out. So everything was okay. But that was my first visit up there, and that was 1971. I got to see the tracks, some tracks they'd left, and they had been taking recorders up there then, because the Johnson Brothers came out earlier that summer and said there's some kind of monster up there. We don't know what it is, but something's weird. It's not bear. It's
some kind of monster. Mm-hmm.
Something's going on. Monster. Yes, that's what you call them, monsters.
Big furry monsters. Yes.
Yeah. So they came out, and all guys went back up there. This guy couldn't believe it. Very religious people.
Yeah.
Pretty much all of them were, and I was too at the time. I'm not religious any longer, but I'm certainly spiritual, like we all are. And I had to go up and with him, and so that's how I got involved in it. And it's been quite an experience, quite a life. It's led me into a lot of places in the world, trying to explore what's going on, what some of these other beings they call in these other parts of the earth, what they call them and what they do.
Yeah.
Why have they found a body?
Yeah.
All these questions go on. And
no, absolutely. And I was really impressed. I think initially, when I found out about your story, I assumed you had just gone up there a couple times. a lot of people, Ron, when you read about these encounters, don't want to go back in the woods
Hmm.
sometimes ever again, depending on what their encounter is like. A lot of people are not prepared for this. And
Right.
you went back again and again, and you had some very humorous accounts of dealing with your horses and your mules, and some of them turned out to be better at going high up into the Sierras than others, right? It's a big undertaking, isn't it, to go all the way up there, with your pack horse
Well,
and everything?
yeah, your horses and mules have to be trail wise. I mean, they can't just jump around every time a squirrel jumps out, or they just you can't just go up there with any kind of an animal that you've been barrel riding with or something. So, yeah, it's I've had a few broken ribs
You had
from
a few
falls off the trail for my horse and my mule and stuff like that. So, it's been an adventure. That story just going in and out could be a story on its
Yeah.
own
Oh yeah.
because there's been a lot of things happen.
Yeah, you had me cracking up a few times there. Uh,
Like my ribs.
well, it's, for those of us that read about your encounters or hear about it or we're listening to the Sierra sounds, it's on YouTube now, little portions of them. And people should know they can get the full CDs from your website, ronmorehead.com.
I
Yes,
had a couple dogs here, and my wife's gone. So.
you didn't bring up dogs, did you? Did you bring dogs up to?
No,
No,
no, no. I never took a dog up there because the Johnson took one up there
the
one time, and
Johnsons.
to the day they died, they said we don't know how that dog got out of his collar. We had him tied up outside, and he would not leave the shelter once he went in. Uh,
He would not leave the shelter once.
so, so, and I've heard so many stories about dogs being. Well, I got one of my second CD about this 911 call. This guy called in when he saw one of these, and his dog had been killed.
Mm.
I interviewed this guy, and yeah, they don't like dogs because dogs will start yapping at them, just like those dogs just start yapping in there,
Yeah.
and that irritates them. And
Oh,
uh,
wow. It's so complex, isn't it? Some of those dogs don't make it out alive after messing with the giants, do they?
well, if they mess with them, they won't. If they just cow down and get back, well, they'll be okay, and that's what most of them do. And a lot of dogs will do that when they hear the sounds, even now. Yeah.
Yes, even when I've played the Sierra sounds around dogs, I have looked at their reaction, and boy, do they pay attention when those sounds are coming out of your speakers.
Yeah.
I can only imagine, Ron, you guys are up in your shelter there. You called it a shelter. You had built this sort of airtight shelter. You'd got the wood together from the trees. You built a like a fort, right?
Yeah, it was a circle of trees, a granite circle. And I didn't do it. Johnson's had done it
The
years
Johnsons.
before. Put these cables around the trees, then leaned deadfall up. So it wasn't really airtight, but it was pretty good weatherproof because we had cables across them up the top too, and plastic over that, and then a deadfall, and then plastic, and then more deadfall, and then alder brush over that just to make it look like a beaver's nest. And the doorway was just two trees. It was like this, and it was just a log we put between the doorways and between two trees, and we would wrap that inside with a cable so that nothing could open it with ease. We thought.
You thought, yeah. And
Uh,
how did it feel the first time you started hearing sounds in there?
most people want to know how afraid were you? Were you afraid? Well, by then I knew that Johnson hadn't gotten eaten, and none of the other guys had gotten eaten or carried away. So
Yeah,
whatever was going on had not hurt them yet. Of course, everybody's heavily armed. I mean, we're guns.
yeah.
It's a hunting camp, and you don't know what you're dealing with at the time, so you're taking firearms with you, and I had mine too. And everybody's ready to shoot their way out if they had to, but we didn't have to and didn't want to. These things kept coming back, and like, some of the sounds you hear are very aggressive, especially in 71 and 72, and you don't know if they're arguing over the food we left out, which we would leave food out for them, or if they're arguing over who's going to come in and get us first. So you don't know. You just don't know. And so you're ready for anything. But again, we think we're dealing with a big dumb ape, that just,
Yes, the big ape, the escaped
yeah,
gorillas. Escape.
yeah. Yeah, and I kind of get down on this in my conferences when I go to them because everybody wants to say, "Oh, they're just flesh and blood. They're just flesh and
Yes.
blood. They got to be identified or whatever." And I'd say nothing's just flesh and blood. We're not just flesh and blood,
Right.
We're not. Well, again, I'm preaching to the choir here, but we are all made of energy, frequency, and vibrating. And I think there's so many mysteries are surrounded that camp, and so many things happen to us that just classical science would not answer. And I think quantum science does answer it, and that's why I put together my second book.
Quantum Bigfoot, yeah. Ron, did you mention the footprints? You saw those footprints up there pretty early on, right?
Yeah, first trip in. Right.
Did you see them suddenly end like we hear about? Or did
Not
they?
not until 2012. My daughter had a sighting. Now, I've heard these people say, "Oh, their trackways just stopped," and I've heard people say they disappeared right in front of my eyes. Well, most researchers just put those people aside because that can't happen, right? In the world they've been trained to think is real, and that's which is world we're in right now. but can it happen? Yes, it can, because Dr. Paul Dirac, I think it was 1933,
Yes.
won the Nobel Prize for antimatter, how matter can turn into energy, and then that was proven by CERN, in 2012, I think, physically. So matter can turn into energy only, and that's when it will go out of your perception, out of our frequency. We only see it within 440 terahertz and 770 terahertz, I think it is. There's so many other frequencies out there, so many other dimensions, so many things we just don't see and can't hear, can't smell. A bear's got 2,100 times more olfactory sense than we do. That's a bunch. And they can smell you from miles away. And we don't hear infrasound or ultrasound, but they're there. So we are limited with what we have as far as our third-dimensional environment goes. However, we're really not limited. We just don't know our potential. That's my opinion.
And that's maybe what Biggie is here to show us. I got to laugh.
Yeah, maybe it is, because they're trying to tell me something that night in '74 when I first saw one.
Biggie. I was reading your book. All of a sudden you start referring to them as Biggie. And when we hear so many, there's so many podcasts out there, so much information, and so many of these encounters seem kind of scary. Some of them potentially violent, gets pretty close. Some of them turn into that. And yet here you are calling them Biggie, like they're a friend. So obviously you did not feel that. I mean, you didn't feel that feeling of threat. I got the feeling from they're just other folks up there, right? Or
yeah. I've come to think of them like a people. They're some type of entity, and with I think they got human genome in their mix in their mitochondrial. And there's actually been established that through geneticists and the DNA. And that's kind of gets us into another area there of the DNA studies that's been done on them. But most people think they were contaminated because it had human genome in them. And really, there's a Dr. Harder, I think his name was, he came out with how a relic hominid could have evolved hundreds of thousands of years ago, whenever, and actually crossbred or inbred with humans and became more and more. If they got 23 pairs of chromosomes, that would have been possible. And they've just been diluted down. Some of them are different than others. And anyway, I get carried away with this stuff. I get excited about it. Plus, I got some caffeine in me now, so watch out.
We will. No. I think what's important here, what you're telling us in your Sierra Sounds, we'll play those in a sec, and your books, we don't know what we're dealing with here. And that's okay. I mean, whoever said that science was a complete picture, it's never been no science as we know, it's never been complete. And exactly right. Paul Dirac suggested way back in the 30s that because of Einstein's equations and the quantum wave function, it implied the existence of antiparticles. A mirror universe, as it would now be called. And this just comes out of quantum mechanics as we know it from a Nobel Prize winner. They're saying there's other particles that you can't directly detect, maybe only gravitationally, dark matter. There's other things there that have to be there to make physics complete, and you can't see it, you can't really detect it. Why wouldn't we want to believe that there's other life that works with this sort of other invisible universe? It almost seems to make sense in a very nice way.
Yes, you're right. I agree with you. And so many people want to just close that door, you know. And
It's an escaped gorilla.
yeah, what I try to tell people, a parachute will only work if it opens. So keep an open mind.
Yes. No, I mean, no, Ron, I think what you're saying is it says a lot about us because a lot of researchers, and I don't like to put anyone down or say anyone's right or wrong, but it does tell, I mean, and I've been in this a while with other topics, is people tend to want it to be simple. And no one ever said that it has to fit in your preconceived little boxes in your mind. Whether, you know, it's a hominoid, the way Igor Burtsev from Russia calls it. They've been studying this a long time in Russia, as we learned from him.
Yeah, I was over there with him.
You know Igor, right? So
Yeah.
they have a whole subject matter in Russia called hominology, I think, isn't that right?
Yeah. Yeah. In fact, I tell people, say, "Hey, what do you do?" I say, "I'm a hominologist." They have no idea what I'm saying.
I've told people hominoid. You mean hominid? I said, no, hominoid. Igor made a distinction there. But I have to tell you, Ron, when I went to WSU in Pullman, Washington, I was one floor down from Grover Krantz.
Oh, really? Okay. Yeah.
I'd never heard of him at the time. He was in the anthropology department. I was
Right.
in sociology, and we were one floor apart.
Hmm.
I could have easily
Cool.
shared the elevator with him, crossed him in the stairwells many times over the 5 years that I was there, 5, 6 years in graduate school. And they even held a conference there in 1989, a Bigfoot conference centered around, as I mentioned, this book, the Walla Walla people, the sightings there. They came up to WCU. I never even heard about it, and we're just right there. And he believed it was it Gigantopithecus, right?
Right, Asia. Well, you know, Jeff Meldrum's kind of picked up that one since Grover passed away,
Yeah.
and he carries it on with the foot impressions. But yeah, Grover actually lived in Squim, up to where I just moved from,
Right.
and he didn't go along with our sounds. He had his mind made up too. He was trying to make it fit into his paradigm, and he just couldn't believe it. In fact, hardly anybody can believe that an ape can talk, you know, because only humans are supposed to be able to have the vocal mechanism for speech.
Right. We're the
These
only
things have speech. We had a cryptolinguist, as you know, Scott Nelson, trained by the military as a cryptolinguist to transcribe sounds to see if it's a language or if it's coded or anything like that for the military. Two-time graduate of that school, and you know, he retired as a cryptolinguist. He got a hold of them by accident and said these things. It's a language by the human definition of language, which is morphine stream, like we're talking now. Well, then you get a hold of hear what Dr. Lieberman says, Brown University. Only humans have the vocal mechanism for speech. You know, the hyoid bone into the tongue, nervous system in the brain, because I can relate what I'm saying right now in speech. Well, that means there's a human component to these things that we were dealing with. And there I go with it. And then you get the geneticists that are fudging right on the same. I don't know if you know who Melba Ketchum was or not, but is, I should say, was. She's still active. But then you got the Dr. Harder paper,
stuff,
the
right?
Dr. Harder paper, which came out substantiating Dr. Meldrum's point of view that they could just be a relic hominid that's evolved up through the ages.
Yes.
Because
they're a relic hominid out there. That's why we see them all the time. Every time I'm just down from the Rockies, there have been sightings just a couple miles from here over the years.
Bailey, you know where Bailey is?
Yes, I was out there a couple weeks ago. They have conferences, you know. Jim Myers holds conferences from time to time.
Yeah, Jim Myers. I spoke at his conference a couple of times. Yeah, it's a hot area.
Yeah, and this is the thing, Ron. I mean, there are so many preconceptions and prejudices about our current state of knowledge that people are afraid to come forward with their experiences, because I learned about the sightings just a couple miles from where I live here. I'm looking out at the Front Range on the other side of my monitor here. They wouldn't talk about it for decades. They finally reported it to BFRO, graduate students at CU, people around here. They were, you know, the stigma that can be attached to you professionally if you say you encountered a big creature up in the park there that's really tall, and you find out on the BFRO.net site at least what they will report of these encounters.
There you go, what they will report.
Because we're heard that those are stripped down of anything paranormal because, of course, we want to be accepted by science. So we're going to take about 70% of our story out to make it fit with what Grover Krantz wanted to hear,
Yeah.
I guess. Right?
Well, Grover Krantz took a hit for taking on this subject, even though he tried to bring it into the Gigantopithecus theory, from Asia. And who knows? Maybe there was a gigantic, but who knows if it was sentient or not, or where. They don't even know for sure if it stood upright. They have enough remains to get.
Oh, we don't even know if it stood upright. We knew it was big.
No. Yeah, we don't know.
Ron, let's listen to some of these sounds. You sent me a few clips. If you want to hear longer versions of these, you can find them on Ron's website, ronmorehead.com. You can find them on YouTube, some short versions. Just look up Sierra Sounds. Now, if you frighten easily, this is not for you. I'm just giving you this warning ahead of time. This is the real deal. When I first heard these, Ron, just about 2 years ago, this is how new I am to the topic. Even my mind, I didn't know what to do with these, okay? I did not know how to process. My graduate school mind did not know how to process this. But let's go ahead and take a listen. I'm just going to turn my mic towards the speaker. The first one are these kind of whooping sounds that you might have been these were the first ones that you heard at a distance?
No, the first ones we heard were the aggressive sounds.
The aggressive sounds. Oh.
Yeah. They were very intimidating sound. Chest beating and teeth popping and very... Yeah.
Okay, let's go ahead. We'll just do the whoops.
Arguing. Some were arguing, too.
Okay, we'll get to that. Let me just do this one first since it's right here. Okay, here we go. Let's see. I'm going to rewind it. And folks, we will get to your questions towards the end of this, so get your questions ready. So here are the whooping sounds.
I recorded that in 1974. They were actually interacting with us outside the shelter for the first time. That's the night I got to see one, actually. Get a glimpse of it anyway. I couldn't get any details out of it.
You got to see them that time, just a little?
Yeah. Well, both of us did. Bill and I had already packed supplies in on the horses and mules, but they knew we were coming. These things knew. I think they saw us packing the animals down at the trailhead when we started, because I found a big track on the trail, which was perpendicular to the trail, but I knew, okay, this tells us something. Earlier on that ride, about a couple hundred yards up the trail, something spooked the animals. Now, we didn't think anything of it. Could have been a bear, could have been a deer, whatever, but they started. And that's actually what the front of the book, Voices of Wilderness, depicts, is that scene right there, the trees and the animals jumping around. But then when we got to camp, Bill started undoing the horses. I started building a fire for our meal, and because it was starting to get late in the evening. And just as soon as it starts getting late, well, you hear these rocks popping, the whooping sounds, and crack, and popping. And then we learn from our experiences around these things, just don't do a thing. Make them think that they haven't got your attention. Just be still and keep doing what you're doing. Yeah. And don't act like don't shine a flashlight out there. They'll be gone, which happened the following night when the Johnsons came in. But anyway, this night was special because we did everything we thought we were supposed to do, which is just keep doing what you're doing. And that's when they started yelling and actually saying something. And that's when I got to yell back at them. I was mimicking them, though, again, thinking I have no idea what they're trying to say. We didn't realize the significance of language, or if it even was a language for sure. I wasn't even thinking that way. Wasn't thinking about quantum physics, wasn't thinking about anything except there's something shooting through the trees right there.
Let's go ahead and play that clip of you conversing with them. This is a short clip, by the way, folks. There's a much longer version of this that I heard. And again, when I heard this the first time, my mind, and I could not quite process what I was listening to. So let's go ahead and listen to that clip. One sec here. Okay, here we go.
Right there, just seen movement right through there.
Time. Or they'll have a
Amazing.
good time, I should
Amazing. Yeah, if you listen to the full clip, you're imitating what they're saying and they're responding, right?
say. I think in a humorous way, they think it's kind of funny that I'm doing that. Yeah. But yeah, those are different, totally different than what we was experiencing in 71, 72, just
Yeah.
because they weren't aggressive. They were actually trying to interact. They were interacting with me, and they were asking me something, which I have no idea what it is, because until you can get one of them to come in and point at a tree and say, "Ooga, ooga, there's a tree," you don't know that ooga, ooga means a tree, right? So we know it's a language by the human definition, but we don't know what they're saying yet. So
Let's listen to the conversation between two of them. This sounds like, is this right outside your structure? This
yeah.
sounds like it's so close. The other clip's a little distant. You hear a little reverb off the.
Well, different tape recorders too. Yeah.
Okay.
This was 2 years. This was 2 years earlier, in 1972, I think. Yeah.
So this was one of the first ones too, what you call the attention display.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go ahead and listen to
1972.
Okay, here we go.
The last word, we tell, that's inside the human. It's very human. That's why some scientists said, "Oh, there's somebody playing with you there. That's human." Until we had Professor Curlin at the University of Wyoming study these things, and he showed that they were inside, outside, above, and below the average human range, and they can do some amazing things with the vocal mechanism that we can't do as humans. And I challenge anybody to try to duplicate these. It just doesn't work for them.
It's so fast, and it sounds like a language. It sounds like
it is. Yeah.
It is a language. And then they're saying, who gets to go in and eat these people? They're saying,
we don't know.
We don't know what they're saying.
But you don't know if that's maybe they were saying that. Or where's the salt and pepper? I don't know. However, in 1924, a guy named John Green. Well, some people who are in the Bigfoot circle know who John Green was. Well, he interviewed Albert Ostman, who was supposedly carried away by a big male and took into a remote area in Canada.
Yeah.
Held captive for 6 days, and he got to observe them. And he said that they were chattering amongst themselves. There was a male, a female, and then 2 adolescents. He wasn't sure why he was there, but he was able to escape through. You have to read the book, I guess. But most people credit him as being very genuine. And actually, I went up into Toba Inlet and started researching that in my airplane years ago with Peter Byrne and Al Berry, and we just flew over that area so much trying to find the bowl that he said he was held in.
Yeah.
We had a helicopter on standby at Camel River, and we was going to get helicoptered in and stay there for a few days and look for artifacts, that stuff cans or something like that he might have left. But we never could find the bowl, and I flew so slow over that whole area for so long, and never could find it. So I think maybe, and I suggested this to John Green, that maybe Albert Ostman was mistaken when he thought it was Toba Inlet, because there's a lot of inlets up there. And we all agreed after we started research, you couldn't report what he was reporting in his interview from where he said he was. Because I dropped down 1,000 feet in my plane just to see if I could see the ships out. Anyway, that carries on.
You wrote about that in your book too, in Voices in the Wilderness. And it didn't quite make sense what you saw with his account of it. This is the 1924.
Yeah, 1924, but he said they were chattering. That's what I took out of it.
We had a question right here. Where was the mic when you recorded these 2 creatures having this conversation?
Okay, it was remoted about 40 feet behind the shelter on a little pine tree. And we think they were probably behind one of these trees, or maybe I found out too, I think they have air sacs in their throat, and they can throw their sound because it's really high amplitude. And they may have been throwing their sounds towards that microphone, but they were right up in there somewhere. And we didn't see him that night. Al Berry didn't see him, and he was looking. You could see the microphone. It sounds like they're holding the microphone almost.
You couldn't.
I brought this up.
They're that close. They're that close to the mic,
Yeah.
but you can't see them.
Right, we didn't see him. Yeah, and several times we should have seen. There's times when I was laying there, must be Meg, inside the shelter. All of us were, and you hear this. I had my headset on. I had these 2 stereo mics right outside, but I lost all my recordings from a house fire. But 2 stereo mics outside the shelter, sticking through the walls there. I could hear this thing walking around, big bipedal elephant, and you'd think you would see the shadow break through the cracks in the walls, but I never saw anything. And I wonder, why can't I see that? I hear it right there, but you don't see it right there. And I just wonder now, in retrospect, how many times they might have been just out of our perception as far as our frequency goes, our light's frequency. So that puts it into, are they interdimensional? What made them?
Now,
were they aliens?
No, really. And this is the thing is, you were in David Paulides' 411 Missing the Hunted, which
Yes.
is really quite an excellent production. I mean, it has these missing persons cases, and then he's up there with you at the Sierra camp. And then he's interviewing, is it Ellen Maccabee?
Yes.
And she describes a predator-like thing moving through the trees beyond her hunting stand in Lima, Ohio. Now, we don't know exactly what that was, but she did say it seemed like it had an arm that reached out to a tree. I mean, it's something invisible, and you were around something that it should have been more visible, right, based on all your interaction.
Yeah, I would think so. Plus, I've heard other reports, so like what she reported, and one of them was from a very, very close person that I know. And they were seen one right where a physical one had been, and they'd seen this pixelated type image there, and it turned and it had the shape of a man, a big man. And when you hear these reports off and on, you gotta wonder. No, you don't wonder anymore. I don't wonder anymore. I think I know what causes that. They're in a vibrational frequency going through the 4th dimension, in my opinion. Because I think they probably, well, once you get into the 5th dimension, I guess time don't exist as we perceive it. So who knows? But that time when my daughter saw one, and then we found the trackway disappeared. That opens your eyes a little bit, because I looked everywhere. Where could that trackway have gone? Could it jumped in a tree? Could it jump somewhere? Well, if they can change their matter into energy, which can happen, right? It does happen to all of us sooner or later. That's because you can't die. Energy can't die. So if they can change their matter into energy, their density would not be there anymore. So their trackways would stop. There you are. That's my simple little answer to all these people that see them disappear and see trackways stop.
Well, there's an amazing consistency here. Jonathan Dover, I think he's a Navajo tracker policeman on the Navajo reservation. He was on the Martin Willis podcast not too long ago, and he mentioned the same thing, is they would be following where these reports where they'd see the footprints, and on trackable ground where the prints should have continued, where there were other prints of other animals, it would just disappear. So this is, I think when you look across all of the evidence, there's a lot of consistency in terms of the tracks disappearing, invisibility, and the chattering. Now, you mentioned in Voices in the Wilderness that someone named Mark Mazel in Ohio recorded similar sounds, and you at first thought they were so similar that he had to be, like...
I thought they plagiarized them. I thought, but no, I went through our files, everything that I'd released, because we got a lot of recordings. Everything I'd released had been released by us, and I could not find that same signature anywhere, but it sounded like our sounds. So yeah, I thought he had, and but he didn't. That's just another mystery. They got something back there. I don't think they can all talk. I don't think they can all do the same thing. I think there's been a dilution factor, because I don't disbelieve in Raleigh hominids, but what have they advanced more than we have? Because we have these abilities in us as humans. We have the pineal gland, we have all these things that the masters used to tell us we can do, but we're not doing them. I can't walk on water yet. It'd be nice if I could turn wine into water or water into wine. I mean, I do doing pretty good.
It's quite a conundrum because they do seem to be voracious hunters when they want to catch deer and elk out there. Mm-hmm. They seem to be quite adept at running them down and just catching them.
Cracking their neck, yeah.
Crack the necks. I mean, they're not vegetarians. And they eat here, but at the same time, they seem to have there seem to be many species of Bigfoot, don't there? I mean, because some people describe them as looking more ape-like. Some people describe them looking more human-like, and people have even described them looking like ape-cat-like, especially when they're on all fours. Right.
I think you and probably most of the people that are listening to this believe that aliens have been here and probably here now. I think for eons they have been manipulating the genome of different species. So yeah, there could be all kinds of different things. There are all kinds of different things out there that have been messed with. Now, why are aliens here? They want this planet. Like we've got the planet, but this is the jewel of the solar system. I mean, it's just beautiful. We're screwing it up right and left for these wars and things, and we got to get our conscious level and our personal vibrational frequency higher through love and compassion, or we're never going to make it to the next level.
No, well said. If we had these types of discussions more frequently, we would realize we all have a lot in common, and there's a lot of other life forms that are very different from us, and we should be working together to understand where are we and what is this place that we're on that we call it, or who else is here with us. I just wanted to mention there was this witness, Claire, from the UK that you mentioned the other night on Spaced Out Radio. Now, she was on Wes Germer's Sasquatch Chronicles.
Yeah, episode 515.
Unforgettable, absolutely unforgettable, because when Wes played your sounds that we just heard a little bit of, and he said, "Claire, did it sound like this?" And she said, "Exactly."
Mm-hmm. She's the one that reported the swelling of the neck when the thing was screaming at her.
She did.
And that relates right to air sacs, which the howler monkeys have those, and we, I guess, remnants, air sacs. And that's how they scream so loud. If these things, and she saw it up close. I talked to her personally. I got her number from Wes, and anyway, we had a long Zoom conversation, and she told me some things that wasn't on Wes's, but it still fits right into, these things. She don't know how she got, after she passed out, she don't know how she got to her car, but she was dragged up there, she thinks.
Dragged her back to her car. I mean, we I think there's part of our minds, Ron, that we're still like little kids and we want everything to be kind of like the fairy tales and stories we were told as kids. And we want these to be nice, furry creatures that could be like pets. But you really don't know what is going to happen when you encounter one, do you?
That's
and
right.
She wasn't even looking. She wasn't squatching. Where she was out there taking pictures at the Sea Otter Refuge down from Carmel Heights. I've been out in that area close by, and she sees them come out on all fours. She said it's like a gecko-like motion. Kind of. They don't see her at first, and then she drops her lens, right? And they.
Well, the male, he was coming after her. I guess the female stopped him. And they were screaming, and she said his throat was. She even seen his tongue. She drew me a picture of it. Huh. His tongue had a mark on it. But she was very credible. She's a linguist. She's from seven different languages. She speaks and writes, and so she's very credible and
very credible.
Extremely, very credible.
And it's funny. The police. Also the police, because she's bruised from being dragged back. I mean, they didn't kill her. They dragged her back to her car. They didn't eat her. They dragged her, and she calls the police.
Or they tried to talk her out of what she saw.
The bear. You saw a bear with opposable thumbs.
Out there, out there picking seaweeds out of the ocean, coming back to the two females.
With juveniles.
Yeah, 2 juveniles there, too. But anyway, that was a very interesting account she gave. But, none of us were, well, I was, but the other guys, they weren't looking for Bigfoot at that camp up there.
No.
It wasn't Bigfoot camp. It was a hunting camp. And this just all happened by accident up there. Well, if you believe in accidents, but there's a reason for it, and I think it's probably to bring us to where we are today, to understand more and more and more what's really going on. They have learned how to do certain things. I think they can do it through their vocal frequency, through their vocal mechanism. They can make a frequency that can change their matter into energy.
Did Scott Nelson say it was like 5 octaves that they could reach? Something
that wasn't Scott Nelson.
Someone else.
That was
a wide range of octaves that we can't.
Thinker.
Oh, Thunker. Yeah, he's done a great.
He's not a he's not a professional, but he does a lot of that stuff.
Oh, he was the one who said 5 octaves.
He said humans can't do that. He said the most human can do is 3 octaves. So anyway, that was interesting. I wish I could get a PhD somewhere that had the quality credentials actually to study that, to see if there are, and do a paper on if there are five frequencies in one tone, like he said. If I can get somebody with that stamp behind their name, people would pay more attention to it, and that's kind of unfortunate, but that's the way it is. And so, if you know anybody, let me know.
Yes, I hereby deem you an honorary squatchologist. Okay.
Oh, thank you.
So a couple things that really struck me that I've been thinking about since reading your books, Voices in the Wilderness. You talk about the strange sounds in and around the camp. You described a tuning fork like sound that would appear only in the daytime, ringing right above the structure.
It's the only time I heard it.
The only time you heard it, yeah.
And it was, it was daytime. You couldn't find the source of it, but it's just a big, like a whirlybird or something up above you, but it's huge, whatever it was, big sound. And anyway, there's that, and there was a lot of strange things like that.
You had metallic sounds, like you thought the camp was being torn apart, your barrels with the metal, rings around. You said it. You guys thought the camp was being torn apart. You went out and nothing had been
changed. Nothing moved. How do you explain that? You can't explain it. I mean, unless they were hypnotizing all of us, somehow give us our brain frequency or so, I don't know. Or we was hearing into another dimension. Or they made that sound with their vocal mechanism, which is very remarkable, I think.
Right. People describe the sound of a bulldozer coming through the forest before their Sasquatch encounter. There was a other witness on Sasquatch Chronicles, Cindy from Virginia, who described what it sounded like a bulldozer. She goes out and there's nothing. You can't see anything.
Yeah, I had another guy, Tom Cantrell's son-in-law, I think it was. They were blasting my sounds, and they went up this area in a boat, and he got out of the boat and went into the shore, and he heard the same crashing sound after he blasted my sounds. And I don't recommend blasting those sounds because you don't know what they're saying. They might be, maybe aggressive. Well, who knows? Might be looking for a mate. That's why you don't know. Just don't know. So, but something come crashing down at him, and that's when he learned to walk on water to get back to the boat.
I bet. Yeah. And you had a door slamming sound.
Yeah, that was right outside the shelter. Yeah, when I was inside the shelter.
And you're way up there, 8 miles up.
Oh,
there's no cars up there.
No, there's no motorcycles. There's nothing up there except us. So anyway, there's a lot of things happen up there.
You had the light phenomena, balls of light occasionally.
Yeah, and one time I saw something that was a UFO, I guess, the only way I could describe it. It was just a big blue ball coming down from the sky, controlled.
Yeah.
And we lost it behind the trees, Bill and I did. But there's that light that you seen in David Pilates that went by our tent. That was spooky because you don't know, again, what it's all about. I mean, what's it doing? It's energy of some type because it's controlled, whatever it is. But there's nobody up there doing that. So what is happening? It just went floating by our and I say floating, I refer to it like a lightsaber, but it wasn't fast. It was just floating through the trees, went right on by us, and wow, that's because I'm up there with just a pea shooter now. I got a little 38 with birdshot in it to get the birds away or if you run across a rattlesnake or something like that, because I got a 52-inch rattlesnake up there one time. Hat band made out of him now, but you just don't know what you're going to run into. So you take that, but that's all I had. But not that I needed more, because I'm not sure what would stop these things if they decided they wanted to work with you or get with you, get on you. Just don't know. And you don't know the intention of any of them. I tell people when they ask me, I say, just keep your guard up when this stuff's going on. If you don't want them around, tell them you don't want them around. They will probably eat, because you have dominance, not dominance, dominion on the planet. That's why they're not supposed to interfere with us like they do.
Yeah, no. Many people have reported these orbs and light phenomena. Even Les Stroud, who did the Survivorman Bigfoot series,
I know, Les. I talked to him before he did that series, actually.
Oh, you did, because he described he's filming a Survivorman series, and he hears some hooping, and he gets a little curious and decides to, meet with Todd Standing and go out. And he described seeing these in Portland. In one of the episodes outside of Portland, you saw something like that, a lightsaber going through the...
Well, that was in 2016, excuse me. David Pilates reproduced it in the 15-minute 401 series.
Uh-huh.
So, yeah,
right, that's right.
I did. But I've seen other lights up there, too. Johnson Brothers claim they had balls of light falling around over their heads up there one time. And they're serious guys. They're not lying about this stuff. They got no reason to. But yeah, there's strange things goes on around these things. I think light is and I've actually had somebody else say that they seen a Bigfoot turn into an orb, just dissipate. And so it's energy. Everything is energy anyway. So how they do what they do is something we'll all find out one of these days.
Yeah, it's so mysterious. At one of the Bailey conferences last year, sponsored by the Sasquatch Outpost, Bailey, Colorado, which you're familiar with. Witnesses described seeing the creatures, the Bigfoot creatures, almost like they emerged from balls of light. At least in the dark, that's what it looked like. They're really associated in some ways that we don't understand, but I think it lends support to your idea that this is in part a quantum creature. I mean, it can move through frequencies in ways that you and I don't think we can do consciously, right?
Well, I think we can.
We can.
If we just evolve a little bit further, quite a bit further, actually. We just don't do it yet.
We don't do it yet. So we do have a couple questions here, Ron. There's so many ways we could go off about. There's so many questions we could ask about this. I did have someone I know named Dominic wanted to know the tree structures. Did you ever see anything like that, or have any idea what those are?
No. Well, we weren't looking for them up there.
Yeah.
I mean, but I didn't see tree structures. I think they live under the ground.
They live under.
Yeah, I don't know if how they do what they do, but the tree structures, I just some of them are very unusual, and something made them. But like it said, like if you don't see what made it, you don't know what made it.
Right. Right.
It might have been Boy Scouts. It might have been a Bigfoot.
Yeah.
I don't know. Might have been a hunter.
Of course, we don't totally know. They seem to be seen around areas where the Bigfoot are, but we're not there when they're created, so we don't know for sure.
Yeah. Same way these stick structures. The signs they say on the ground. Like Tom Cantrell's written a whole book about that, and that wouldn't be so unusual if they were doing that. But we didn't look for those things up there. We weren't. We were seeing the tracks, and at nighttime
of course.
Just start recording if they came around.
One time you did mention that you had hunted a deer and you moved it to a very high height in the tree, and it still got way up there. Is that right?
Well, the cable we have up there is high.
The cable is high.
Yeah, and we had hooks up there. You just clean it up, trim it out, skin it, and hang it until we get ready to leave. And we had it hanging there, and we cleaned off under it because we knew they were checking us out. And we went back to the stove area and started eating our dinner. And thought Larry and I, Warren's son, we thought, well, let's go check that out. See, we're over there, and those 3 tracks were under it. So something had been there looking at our deer. They moved it, and was looking over the shelter. It got to be pretty tall. Look over that shelter. at us while we were eating. That's a little weird, you know. You, you get some thrills. Yeah.
Yeah. Before we get to the questions here, we've got a bunch of questions. You mentioned about playing sounds out there in the woods, recreating Bigfoot sounds. In one of the Rusty Wilson books, he's a fly fisher guide here in Colorado that's collected a lot of Bigfoot stories. And he's written them about different states and different national parks, Glacier, Yellowstone. He describes in there, this was really unforgettable. It was a biologist from one of the universities of Montana, either Missoula or Bozeman. She decides to do an experiment like that to see if she can measure any epigenetic changes in undergraduates if she exposes them to sounds of bear or elk and then Bigfoot sounds. Mm-hmm. They play them overnight. The kids don't remember hearing the sounds, but they do remember feeling afraid. They had blocked it from their memory. And then she realized as she left the tape recorders out in the woods after everyone had left, she had told people they could stay till the end of the day. But nobody wanted to stay for some reason. This is North Montana somewhere near a lake, the way she described it. She goes out to get the tape recorders, and the next thing she knows, it's a couple hours later, it's raining and it's dark, and she's leaning against a tree, and she feels a little confused. And she doesn't know what's going on, but she makes her way to her car, almost has the feeling she should stop, but she gets in the car, and then she sees red eyes in the back running, and the thing jumps on the car.
Oh, wow.
So what became just like a psychology, biology experiment, she realized these were real, and people can go out there thinking, it's just a sound. But as you said, we don't know what you're playing when you play those whooping sounds or any of these sounds. I never played these sounds that you've recorded when I'm out in the woods, by the way.
I don't recommend it. I don't recommend
so you know, folks, do not go out in the woods. You don't know what they're saying, and you don't know what could be attractive. Yeah.
I got a bunch of do's and don'ts in my book, suggestions anyway, what worked for us anyway. And if people want to go by, a lot of people say, well, we went by that and this happened. So they want to catch up on that. It's a good way to do it, because biggest thing is not what you do, but what you don't do. Mm-hmm. You don't shine a flashlight. You don't just, like I say, like we learned up there, just keep doing what you're doing when you think something's going on. And one thing you listen for is the sound of silence, because everything gets still.
That is such an interesting aspect of it, that sudden quiet. Yeah.
Even the horses, they don't tromp when this is going on. And the bear comes around, believe me, they're going to tromp.
Oh, yeah.
But they just, like they're frozen. You look out the door of the crack and see the horses over there when these sounds are going on, and they're just like they're paralyzed or something.
What do you think that is, Ron? Is it?
I think they can entangle them. They get on the right frequency with anything.
Tangle,
They can entangle them. And it's something that most people don't really think about that much, but we can all be entangled if we get on the right frequency, or if they can match our frequency. It's like fish in a spool of fish. They're not talking to each other. It's like birds. They're not talking to each other when they're flying in a group, but they're all doing the same thing, and they're entangled. And we can do the same thing, but we're not very good at it.
Yeah, we don't listen as well. You people out there with dogs, some of the descriptions are they can't even get the dog's attention. The dog is so focused on something out there in the woods, being very quiet, like they know there's something potentially threatening. The humans can't even get them to do anything if the dog isn't running for the tent or trying to get in, will not come out. They're under the bed if you're in your house there.
Right. Yeah.
So what Ron is saying is very important here, folks, is if you're, and David Paulides, by the way, says the same sort of thing. I mean, we're not saying that this is what's causing these disappearances. We don't know. But that is one thing to look out for, is you're outdoors. And I've spent a lot of time outdoors, Ron. I love to hike. I've done years of hiking by myself. I've never encountered anything like this in the woods that I remember. But if it gets suddenly quiet and you get that spooky feeling, and I know friends who've experienced this, it's probably a good time to turn around and go back the other way. or
be still and see what else happens.
be still. Just pay attention. Take the earbuds out of your ears.
Yeah. I mean, if you really want to understand this thing, stay there and understand it as much as you can. Unless they start throwing rocks or something, then you want to get out of the way.
Rocks. They're good at throwing rocks. They seem
They are
very good. Did you have rocks thrown at you?
One time, Alberry and I went on an expedition up north by Lake Amador, and these guys took us away. I flew in there, and they picked us up. We went way back in the woods in some dirt logging road and to the end of it, and they said they'd been experiencing Bigfoot back there. They wanted somebody to tell them what to do. Well, we was all sitting around the campfire that night talking, and this rock comes whizzing by us. I mean, it's like an arrow, just like that, and hit this tree. Well, that scared them, and kind of concerning to us too. But Alberry recorded it, actually. I had it on his record. I heard it later. They took off. They said, "We're not staying here." But something catapulted that thing. I mean, something with one huge arm had to have thrown that. And anyway, we found the rock the next morning, a big chunk off the tree where it hit the tree. And Larry Johnson, one of the Johnson boys, he was coming up there a different way one time into the camp. And he said he had a rock thrown over his head, the size of a grapefruit, just huge. And when they do that, that means don't go any further that way, and don't mess with this because we got a baby around or something. You don't know what it is. But again, just we have a heart. We have our heart has a brain, and if you get the coherence going with the chakras and get yourself balanced, so your heart is talking to your mind up here, you got your mind focused in on receiving stuff. You can get the coherence going between your heart and your brain, and you'll be balanced. And that's why you listen to your gut feeling sometimes. So your gut feeling says go right, but your brain says go left. They're not talking to each other. And you want them to do that because it's important. And that's what I like to say.
Very good point. The vagus nerve that connects.
There you go. Yeah, you got it.
To be receiving and pay attention. And we should say, even though there are scary encounters, there are many encounters where they have rescued people, they've rescued kids. I've spoken to people that have had their relatives rescued after falling off horses, unconscious, something big and hairy, picked them up and moved them out of danger, took them out of streams. There's such a wide range of encounters.
Yeah. And then you got the cannibalistic giants that the Paiutes talked about.
The cannibalistic giants.
You got all, people like up in Alaska too. I was up there with the Discovery Channel here this last year.
Yeah.
Filming a Portlock, and
yeah,
they had something going on up there years ago. Something was tearing people apart. They wanted to know what to do because they wanted to re-inhabit their village, But I flew over in a helicopter and looked it over pretty well, and I think I gave them some suggestions on what to do, what not to do. They were overfishing it, over taking too much lumber out. They were mining it too. I think they just needed to perhaps take it easy on the environment better.
Yeah. Has that show been released yet on Discovery Channel?
Yeah, it's on
what
Discovery
was it called?
Plus, I think. It's called Alaska Killer Bigfoot.
Alaska Killer. Yeah, it's a whole range. It's just like people. There's a whole range of behavior.
I think I'm in episode 4 and 5.
You're not, okay. We will be looking. Ron, let's get to some questions since I did promise people. We'll go through some of these. So I did. Someone wanted to know your professional background besides Bigfoot. You're a restaurateur, pilot, explorer, adventurer, and musician, as I found out before the show.
Yeah. Well, you pretty much hit it there. Yeah, I do a little bit of everything. I made my living through hospitality industry. I had several restaurants and hotels, and I did quite well with those.
In California, is that right?
Yes, California. That allowed me to do some of the things I've done. I've been in safety diver down in a scuba diver too, down in Patagonia, and it's for the right whales that we're filming, and done quite a few things. I've flown into Alaska in my own plane several times, and all over actually, into way down to Panama Canal too. So that's my background a little bit. I've just been doing what I want to do because someday you may not want to do it, and if you want to do something, figure out a way to do it.
Yeah, I like that. Another question here. Rick wants to know, do you think they want to interact with us? Do they want to be left alone? Is it a mix? Both?
Both. It's a mix. The ones we had wanted to interact with us. They wanted to tell me something. I hope to find out one of these days. But some of them just want to intimidate you. They want to toy with you. They want to. I think they're training their young ones because when they're in a 3D environment, they have to live by our 3D rules, which means they can be shot, they have to eat, they poop, they procreate,
Yeah.
they do all that. I think when the young ones are here, they have to grow up to learn this stuff before they can transfer into energy and do that stuff.
That's interesting.
So
Very interesting. Andrew wants to know what size was the lightsaber sword.
it was probably about 3.5 feet long.
300.
About, yeah. And it was just, like I say, floating through there. It wasn't bright, it was just glowing. It wasn't like it was lighting up the whole countryside. It wasn't that way at all. So, very interesting because you don't know what to think with it. You don't know what to do with it.
No.
You just sit there and hope, it's not coming after you.
It's just fascinating. That's all I could say. I mean, I think we overestimate our formal knowledge. We think,
Oh, so true.
You go through school, graduate school, whatever. You think, oh, I know what's going on. You do not know what's going on. Let's be honest. You do not know what's out there. And you have to unlearn all that the rest of your life. That's what I'm doing.
I appreciate you saying something like that.
Most of what we learn is just not what's going on out there, folks. And this is, just as Ron is saying, pay attention, receive, listen.
Yeah.
It'll tell you what's going on.
Our government is
They don't help. They're not helping with this. It's not.
Oh, they're hiding things. Yeah. And finally, we found out that's not a weather balloon that went out of Roswell.
No, it wasn't a weather balloon. Yeah, I don't think it was a weather. No, and the National Park Service. I love national parks. I love national parks. They're not helping. They are not helping here. They're not sharing info. We know that Jim Myers pointed out. He showed us at a Bailey event a couple of weeks ago, an evening event from Mount Hood National Forest. They actually had a Bigfoot reporting forum. Have you heard about that?
No, I haven't.
Someone who worked there saw it, and she took a picture of both sides. And it was this long form of where did you see it? What was it like? And then there was a thing. Any joke reports will not be put in the database. He showed us this official form from this particular national forest branch. They all must have something like this. Well, they should be sharing it with us. I mean, we pay for it. Julie wants to know, have you experienced any paranormal activity when you're away from the woods? Or any presence?
Yes.
Good question. Yes.
We heard a clicking sound at our stove when we was up at the shelter one time.
Clickings.
I think I write about this. It was like a castanet, I refer to it in my book, but it kept getting closer and closer. And we had the door closed to the shelter, but all of a sudden it was inside the shelter. As soon as you turn the light on, it stopped immediately. Turn the light off, it started again. Had that happen to me down in my ranch down in the valley. I was out irrigating, and I heard this clicking sound, the same sound around me somewhere. Could not find the source of it. We didn't see the source of it that night up there either, but don't know what to think about that. What's it doing? It's just a clicking sound. And I kept looking for it, trying to figure out what it could be, but it never did. Anyway, Bill McDowell, my friend, he was up there that night with the clicking sound. I said, you ever had anything else happen to you down here? And he says, yeah, that clicking sound. He said, I was outside and had that clicking sound going on around me. Well, what do you do with that? What are they doing? What's it all about? Is it some type of an alien interaction or trying to, I don't know. We don't know. So much we don't know, but it all falls into other dimensions and other entities out there that we just don't see and don't understand yet. But we're getting closer.
Yeah, we know about 1%. Maybe, yeah. Because, you mentioned UFOs. I mean, there's this whole book by Stan Gordon. I'm sure you're familiar.
I know Stan,
yeah. So why are these Bigfoot seen around all these UFOs in this wave in Pennsylvania, southwestern Pennsylvania in the 70s? What do they have to do with each other? I don't have the slightest idea, but this is what the witnesses report throughout.
Well, the first report of that, is 1888 in the Eureka Times. Huffington Post showed this. A rancher and some Native Americans saw this small moon come down and 3 crazy bears jumped out of it.
There you go. It's the escaped bears.
Yeah, that's one of the first written reports.
I knew they were bears, Ron. This has all just been...
And I've talked to people that have seen UFOs and these Bigfoots at the same time. And again, I had the UFO come down while we was having these encounters up there. So there's something I think, who knows, but there's some type of a component there, I think, alien intervention into the genome of a species.
Yeah, it has something to do with it. It's a big story, and we barely have started the
Oh, yeah.
preface here of what this big story is. But it's going to be an amazing story as we uncover this. Julie just wanted to point out, I interviewed Julie and her husband. They had something happen in their home area in Alabama. And Julie had a Bigfoot sighting in Indiana as a kid. And she mentioned earlier here that the dogs were like not participating in that. She saw something as a kid picking berries at the end of the street that was white, had white fur, very tall, just looked at her, very benign. And of course, her parents tried to convince her that it was a neighbor in a fur coat. She
Yeah.
did say, now this got me thinking the other day, because when I interviewed her, she was saying, well, her husband had heard these clicking sounds. He had seen a flashing light down from their structure, and he went down, and there were two tall beams, and they were making clicking sounds. Now, it didn't occur to me until I read your book, Ron, that maybe they heard clicking, and Noel heard clicking and whistling sounds. It didn't occur to me until I read your book. Maybe this is their language, right? Whistling and sounds, clicking.
Depending on which one's there. Yeah. I mean, there's different ones, different kinds of things goes on.
Different ones.
Clicking sounds might be a certain one, a certain alien, whatever. I don't know. I know that, I think anyway, there's a definite connection with aliens and Bigfoots.
Yeah.
But, not necessarily all of them. There may be some relic hominids just regressed up through the troglodytes on into where we're seeing them now. And they've learned how to evolve what they are a little bit further. They've been given that attribute by their creator, whatever that was. But we're special. Humans are special, I think. We've been created by ninth dimensional beings, I think, which are the light beings. And if you get into even biblical terms, it talks about God being light, and some of these ancient tales too talk about how the light beings came down. They call them the gods and from the skies. And so anyway, there's these things we're going to learn as time goes on. We're living through a linear time, which won't exist when you get out of this.
We're just little kids here trying to figure this out. One more question, Ron. Did your particular biggies leave any presents? Was there any gifting going on there?
Yeah.
They did.
Yeah.
They did.
Yeah. In fact, that night when I was interacting with them, the next morning we found, earlier that year, let me back up, we had re-roofed the plastic on the shelter, put some fresh alder brush on top of it. Well, the next morning we found out there was two branches been twisted off over by the spring and laid up there. And that's not the only time they gift us, but it's like they're saying, here you are. But they had been there before we got there. They knew right where we was going. We found this big track. I did. As soon as I opened the door and looked out the shelter, I seen this big track. Well, Bill had lost his dust cover off his rifle when we went in. And that dust cover was laying right on top of that track and not smashed down. So the track was made before we got there. Mm-hmm. So there's that. And also sometimes we gather pine cones. I talk about this stuff. And we go out for a walk in the daytime. We use the pine cones to start fires with, and the little bucket that we had that we used to feed the horses grain in would be full of pine cones when they came back. Little things like that. Yeah, they'll gift you if they want to. But I think we was leaving food for them. We thought maybe that's what they were after, but I think it's more just interaction, wanting to reveal themselves in some way. I do think they want to help. What we were dealing with, we're not aggressive. They probably want to help us, but again, you don't know which one you're going to deal with and what they're made of, who made them, and what their agenda is. So I just suggest to anybody being very careful and have your guard up. But don't be afraid either. If you can handle that, that's the hard part. Fear is your only enemy.
Right. It's easy to have that feeling come up. I think, just talking about it like this would probably help people if they ever encounter it, would have a little more sense of what, they would refer to your experiences, other experiences. I didn't have any frame of reference for this until very recently. It takes a while to be open to this type of information. I encountered so many witnesses even over the years, and somehow it didn't quite all come together until recently that this was very important. We should pay attention to, and a lot of overlap with these phenomena. So
Yeah.
one last question, Ron. Here's the last one. Have any psychics attempted to translate those sounds into what they thought they meant? Anyone?
I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know if they're psychic or not, but I've had different people over the years tell me they know what they're saying. But the problem I've got is they all tell me something different. So you don't know who to believe. Until I get it, receive it through my own brain some way, I'm not really open to people trying to tell me what they're saying. I have been told by a psychic that they weren't supposed to be interfering with us like they were,
Right.
and that one of them was there to protect me, actually, to keep them from doing harm. Which I don't know if that's true or not, but I've had it told to me. I've had something watched over my life. I think I'm close to 80 years old now, and I should have, by all rules and by everything going on, I should have had it several times and things I've done. Pretty much on the edge of life, but I just want to experience things, and that's what life's all about, is experiences and how you respond to the experience. If we learn to respond to experiences with positivity and not negativity, and I get a little philosophizing here, but I feel like I'm supposed to, because that's how we raise our vibrational frequency so we can advance and evolve ourselves.
Absolutely. Well said. Yeah. Ron, you're going to be in some conferences coming up over the next couple of months, right? So Nebraska, Bigfoot?
Yeah, I'll be at Nebraska conference. I think it's the 23rd or something like that of April.
Hastings?
And then
right.
Hastings, Nebraska, and then I'll be in Townsend, Tennessee in the next month. And then June, I'll be in Medline Falls.
Medline Farms with David Paulides.
Washington. Yeah. That's up by Canada, yeah. And anyway, I got things like that lined up. That's the ones I can remember right now. But it's fun. I enjoy the conferences, and I like to present my PowerPoint program and those things, and kind of lead people and tell them where I'm coming from and the science behind these things. Yeah. Because most people don't understand if you don't. Well, you need science behind it. People say, "Well, I can record these sounds. What do I do?" Well, first of all, you got to get them substantiated. They really are real. Someone's not playing with you. And so, yeah, I'm having fun doing that. I don't like traveling so much, but I do travel now. And I'm in North Carolina. That's where I live now.
Yeah.
It's a bit of a trip. I was just in, where was it? Kelso, Nevada.
How is it moving from the west to the east?
It's 3,000 miles.
Yeah, I know. I grew up back there. So, yeah.
Well, we just decided let's get off this rainy peninsula. We was on the Olympic Peninsula, which there's a lot of Bigfoot there, by the way.
Yeah.
And I was part of that Olympic project, and kind of adopted me into there. But yeah, then we drove out here and put a little camper trailer and stayed here for a month in the B&B looking for a place to buy, and bought a place here.
Great. Well, Ron, I want to really thank you for coming on tonight, and it's really been fascinating.
And, well, thanks for asking me. I appreciate it.
And again, Ron's website is ronmorehead.com.
10, Morehead.
10. And you still have the CDs for sale?
Yeah, the CDs are downloadable now.
Downloadable.
You can find a store that's got them. There's several stores carrying them now. David Paulides smells them out. So does the Forks. So does other places. But the books you can get the hard copies delivered to you, paperback, through Amazon. But I don't send anything out anymore. It's just got to be too much to do. So everything's downloadable, though, the books and all. So.
I'm going to put those right here on the screen again. Okay, well, Ron, thanks very much. We look forward to seeing you again.
Well, thank you, Simeon. I appreciate your invitation, and you're a good person.
Oh, thank you very much. You too. Okay, thanks, folks, and we will see you next time and talk to you soon.
Take care.